Fabulous 12. So, welcome to episode 15 of Childhood Favorites. Today I'm going to be reading Chapter 8 and Chapter 9 of Maniac Magee, written by Jerry Spinelli. Chapter 8. And how he became to be called Maniac. The town was buzzing. The schools were buzzing. Hallways, lunchrooms, streets, playgrounds. West End, East End. Buzzing about the new kid in town. The stranger kid. Scraggly, carrying a book, flap-soled sneakers, the kid who intercepted Brian Dennehy's pass to hands down and punted it back longer than Dennehy himself ever threw it. The kid who rescued Arnold Jones from Fencerwald's backyard. The kid who tattooed giant John McNabb's fastball for half a dozen home runs. Then circled the sacks on a bunted frog. Nobody knows who said it first, but somebody must have. Kid's gotta be a maniac. And somebody else must have said, yeah, regular maniac. And somebody else, yeah. And that was it. Nobody except Amanda Beale had any other name for him. So pretty soon, when they wanted to talk about the new kid, that's what they called him. Maniac. The legend had a name, but not an address. At least, not an official one, with numbers. What he did have was the deer shed at the Elmwood Park Zoo, which is where he slept his first few nights in town. What the deer ate, especially the carrots, apples, and day-old hamburger buns, he ate. He started reading Amanda Bell's book his second day in town, and finished it that afternoon. Ordinarily, he would have returned it immediately, but he was so fascinated by the story of the Children's Crusade that he kept it and read it the next day. And the next. When he wasn't reading, he was wandering. When most people wander, they walk. Maniac Magee ran around town, around the nearby townships, always carrying the book, keeping it in perfect condition. This is what he was doing when his life, as it often seemed to do, took an unexpected turn. Chapter 9. John McNabb had never in his life met a kid he couldn't strike out, until the runt. Now, as he thought about it, he came to two conclusions. 1. He couldn't stand having this blemish on his record. 2. If you beat a kid up, it's the same as striking him out. So McNabb and his pals went looking for the kid. They called themselves the Cobras. Nobody messed with them. At least, nobody in the West End. The Cobras had heard that the kid hung around the park and the tracks, and that's where they spotted him. One Saturday afternoon on the tracks, by the path that ran from the Oriole Street dead end to the park. He was down by Red Hill and heading away from them, book in hand as usual, but the Cobras just stood there, stunned. I don't believe it, one Cobra said. Must be a trick, said another. I heard about it, said another, but I didn't believe it. It wasn't a trick. It was true. The kid was running on the rail. McNabb scooped up a handful of track stones. He launched one. He snarled, "He's dead. Let's get him." By the time Maniac looked back, they were almost on him. He wobbled back, leaped from the rail to the ground, and took off. He was at the Oriole Street dead end, but his instincts said no, not the street. Too much open space. He stuck with the tracks. Coming into view above him was the house on Raco Hill, where he had eaten spaghetti. He could go there to the whistling mother. The other kids be safe. They wouldn't follow him in there, would they? Stones clanked off the steel rails. He darted left, skirted the dump, wove through the miniature mountain range of stone piles, and into the trees. Skiing on the hills, down the steep bank, and into the creek, frogs plopping, no time to look for stepping rocks. Yells behind him now, war whoops, stones pelting the water, stinging his back. The other side, through the trees and picker bushes, past the armory jeeps and out to the park boulevard, past the Italian restaurant on the corner, the bakery, screeching tires, row houses, streets, alleys, cars, porches, windows, faces staring, faces. The town whizzing past. Maniac, a blur of faces. Each face staring from its own window, each face in its own personal frame, its own house, its own address, some place to be when there was no other place to be. How lucky to be a face staring out from a window. And then, could it be? The voices behind him were growing faint. He slowed, turned, stopped. They were lined up at a street, a block away. They were still yelling and shaking their fists, but they weren't moving off the curve. And now they were laughing. Why were they laughing? The Cobras were standing at Hector Street. Hector Street was a boundary between the east and west ends, or to put it another way, between the blacks and the whites. Not that you never saw a white in the east end or a black in the west end. People did cross the line now and then, especially if they were adults and it was daylight, but nighttime, forget it. And if you were a kid, day or night, forget it. Unless you had business on the other side, such as a sports team or school. But don't just be strolling along as if you belonged there. As if you weren't afraid. As if you didn't even notice you were a different color from everybody around you. The Cobras were laughing because they figured the dumb, scraggly runt would get out of the east end in about as good a shape as a bare big toe in a convention of snapping turtles. That ends chapters 8 and 9. Anyways, if you like this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you want, you can like me on Facebook, follow me on Pinterest, and add me on Snapchat. Bye!